What's up, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this video review, we're going to be looking at Darksiders Warmastered Edition, the Nintendo Switch version of Darksiders Warmastered Edition, obviously for the Nintendo Switch. Warmastered Edition is also available on the PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Steam, and yep, even the Wii U got a version of Darksiders Warmastered Edition. But for this review, obviously, we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Switch version. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link in the description and you can check it out. Now, in 2010, THQ, before going under and being referred to as THQ Nordic then, released a brand new IP back then called Darksiders. It was essentially a game that was kind of a mixture of, took certain elements from games like God of War, Legend of Zelda, and Devil May Cry in it, and it took place in sort of a post-apocalyptic world where the end of days didn't exactly happen and when it was supposed to happen, with war being accused of it and trying to find those responsible for it. It was an interesting game when it came out back then, but it certainly was a fun game indeed. And the series has found its following though, but kind of struggled after the release of Darksiders 2 when THQ went under, and was unclear what would happen to that series, who had got the rights, and so forth though. So it was kind of interesting when THQ Nordic brought back all the rights and all that, and basically would continue the Darksiders series, and they released Darksiders 3 last year, which was kind of controversial for some people though. I personally didn't hate the game though. I thought it was good though, but wasn't the best one. I consider Darksiders 2 to be the best entry in the series. So it was kind of interesting to hear earlier this year when it was announced that the port of the Warmastered Edition was coming over to the Nintendo Switch. And it did kind of put a smile on my face, even though I've played the PS3 and the PS4 version, Darksiders, I think the Warmastered Edition on the PS4. So, does this version hold up very well? Does the Nintendo Switch version anyway play well or hold up well? And the honest answer is, yes, it still holds up well, but it also holds up to any criticism that I had with the game when it originally came out in 2010 on the PS3, or when I played the Warmastered Edition on the PS4. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pro. The first one has to do with the art style. One of the things about the Darksiders series that I always enjoyed was the comic book or somewhat unique art or very interesting art style to the game. And this one shows it very well though. Both Darksiders 1, 2, and to some extent Darksiders 3 had a very much, kind of a, I won't say like a cel-shaded art style, but not quite cel-shaded, but very, had sort of like a graphic novel feel to it, and that certainly wasn't a bad thing. So it certainly was. I won't call it like the graphics were in the level of like say a AAA game, but the art style more than makes up for it, and it definitely looks nice. The art style definitely looks nice in the game. The next thing I want to talk about, and this one mostly applies to the Switch version as far as I'm aware of, is the graphical options. For those who are not familiar though, I think Digital Family covered this in a way though, you could check out their video in the link in the description though, is that the game does have a graphical option in the Switch version as far as I'm aware of though. I believe that you could play the game with high quality, which would be at 1080p but runs at 30 frames per second, or high performance, which is basically game running at 720p but being locked at a 60 frames per second, and that's definitely not a bad thing. No, I just want to point out this is when the game is docked though. So while I would have liked to see the game run at 1080p 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch, it's nice to know that they at least offer a graphical option for this game. And for me personally, I think having a steady frame rate is more important than having graphical bells and whistles, so I aim for the performance one. And interestingly enough, this feature is also available when you're playing the game undocked, or when you're playing a tablet or in portable mode to be exact. I think the resolution drops a little bit lower from the 720p that the Switch display normally has, but it still maintains a rock solid 60 frames per second nevertheless. So I do appreciate the fact that the developers added or the folks who worked on the Switch version added a graphical option to the Switch version of Darksiders Warmastered Edition. And last but not least is the gameplay is still enjoyable though. Even after all these years, even after when the game originally came out in 2010, or when the Warmastered Edition came out for the PS4, the Xbox One, and of course on PC and Wii U, the gameplay is still enjoyable. If you've played games like, Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, the old Legend of Zelda games, pre-Breath of the Wild, of course, games like Devil May Cry or God of War, the old pre-PS4 God of War games, though, you'll feel right at home with it, because the gameplay is very similar and so forth, and it still is enjoyable even after all these years. So gameplay overall is still great, at least in my book, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which will be the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of the Nintendo Switch version of Darksiders Warmastered Edition. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And the cons, though, I only really have 2 that could really pop into my head as far as Darksiders Warmastered Edition. They're not really huge cons in my opinion, but they do still, it's worth pointing out nevertheless. Now, we'll start off with the first one. Now, as I mentioned in the pros part, I talked about how I enjoy the gameplay, and the gameplay is still, great. It takes elements from games like Legend of Zelda, Devil May Cry, and God of War, and all, and that certainly is not a bad thing. But that said, at the same time, it comes off as you could point out okay, that part is God of War, that part is Devil May Cry, that part is The Legend of Zelda. In one example, you go into an area which pretty much acts like a dungeon like you would see in The Legend of Zelda. You pick up a key, you need a key to open the door, or you clear out a room, which then plays a little jingle. Darksiders won't take on the jingle though. Combat, you have basically, and when you defeat the enemies and to a certain point, you can hit a certain button to perform a special move or so forth. So the gameplay is going to feel familiar to some people. It doesn't really offer a huge. It does offer some things that are new, but it comes off as it doesn't offer anything new or offers anything different from other games you may have played. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad game or anything like that. On the contrary, Darksiders, particularly Darksiders Warmastered Edition, is still a fun game, nevertheless, though. It's just that the gameplay is just going to come off for some people who have been playing video games for a long time. Like I said, they're going to be okay, that part's Zelda, that's part God of War, that's part Devil May Cry, and so forth. So, the gameplay is still fun, but it feels like it's going to come off as you've played these type of games before in the past. And last but not least is that at certain parts of the game, or at least at one part that I'm familiar with though, there's a part where you basically go on what looks like a on-rail shooter part. It kind of almost feels a little bit like what games like Space Harry or Star Fox is, and they're not bad, but they can be a little bit tricky, particularly when it comes to aiming your character. Though it doesn't play exactly how it would be if you were to play a Star Fox level or anything like that. Basically, it almost kind of comes off in a way kind of like how what Kid Icarus Uprising would be if you were to not use the stylus to move the cursor or anything like that. It basically is this: you use based on you use the L, but you use the left analog stick to move the character that war is on, and you use the right analog stick to sort of aim, and can be a little bit tricky at time. Another case is where you're basically where war is picking up one of those like angel guns that the angels use and all, and the controls are very similar to the on-rail shooting part, so that part can be a little bit tricky at times. It can be kind of difficult to play that part though, and it can be somewhat frustrating. It doesn't make the game impossible to play, it doesn't make it like difficult or anything, it just can be sometimes annoying. Overall, Darksiders Warmastered Edition is still a fun game though. Yes, this is a port of the original 2010 Darksiders game, and yes, this is probably like the third time this game has been released. Of course, obviously, third time though. The first one in 2010, second time when released on the PS4, the Xbox One, the PC, Steam, and even the Wii U, which is still amazing. And I gotta give THQ Nordic credit for actually releasing one on the Wii U. So it is sort of interesting that they decided to bring this over to the Nintendo Switch. Nevertheless, I certainly don't have a problem with that though. I still think the game is enjoyable and fun, and if you like the idea of bringing this game, like the idea of a portable version of Darksiders Warmastered Edition, it's definitely worth something to check out. I do hope the game does well enough, even though it's a port of the other versions though, I do hope it does well enough that perhaps I would like to see THQ Nordic bring over Darksiders 2, which is my favorite entry in the series. I would love to see that come to the Nintendo Switch, and if they can pull it off, if it's possible, I wouldn't mind seeing, say, Darksiders 3 coming over to the Nintendo Switch. I understand that's not a favorite among everyone. Not everyone liked the fact that they kind of went with a Dark Souls type of approach, which I can understand why, but I enjoyed it nevertheless, and I thought it was a good game. So here's to hoping that other entries, that 2 and hopefully 3, can make their way over to the Nintendo Switch. Okay, this concludes our video review of Darksiders Warmastered Edition for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Darksiders Warmastered Edition coming to the Nintendo Switch? Are you glad that they brought it over to the Nintendo Switch? Have you picked up the Switch version, or are you happy with the other versions that came out? Do you think this could open the door to, say, maybe Darksiders 2 or Darksiders 3 coming over to the Nintendo Switch? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it, and I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you'd like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of the video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good evening then. Bye!